Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Casual Criminalist. I am your Casual Criminalist, and what I do here is I read a script from Matt. Thank you so much, Matt, about Silver Screen to Reality, the real-life Scream killers. Dude, a friend of mine, the Scream movies, right, the ones with the scary mask. I remember I went around to my mate's house, it must have been like 13, 14, and Scream was an 18 movie. Side note, the first 18 movie I saw was Starship Troopers, and I was like, holy shit. There's lots of violence and naked people. I went around to my mate's house, we watched Scream, and he didn't tell me he had a Scream mask. And I'm just like having a slash before going to bed, and he's just like standing outside there with a Scream mask. I'm like, oh, anyway, let's just jump into it, shall we? I've not read it before, that's the format of the show. What's your favourite scary movie? These are the haunting words of Ghostface, the iconic killer from the beloved horror slasher franchise Scream.
What's your favourite scary movie?
I don't know.
Is Scream also sort of a comedy? Is it like a parody of a horror movie in a way? Clad in a dark cloak, usually wielding a knife and wearing a white screaming ghost-like mask, they've killed numerous people over the course of 6 movies and a TV show. 1, there's 6 movies? 2, there's a TV show? With a 7th movie coming very soon. Collecting up to $910 million at the box office, it's one of the most successful horror franchises of all time, with millions of fans worldwide. God damn, $910 million? That's a lot. And I bet it's cheap to make. And of course, someone had to take their fandom to as dark a level as they could. The year 2006, 6 years after Scream 3 had been released, and a teenage girl was simply minding her own business one night, not a worry to be had. That is until she started hearing noises in the house and realized that she wasn't alone. Well, she's a teenage girl. Why would she be alone in a house? I'm assuming she lives at home. What followed was a bloodbath, and all at the hands of a couple of losers who wanted to imitate their favorite movie and get famous from it. Genuinely sad and sickening. This is the story of Cassie Jo Stoddart and how her life was ended, all for sick kicks and cheap thrills. Just before we continue today, quick word from our wonderful sponsor, Vessi. Look, there's wet outside and then there's, sock-soaking, autumnal wetness, or fall wetness. I don't know what you Americans call it, but the season when it rains all the time. It's autumn, it's fall, but wherever you are, whatever you're up to, your Vessis, once you purchase them, will help with that. This is the Stormburst high top specifically, with the high top, you see it right there in the name. It's waterproof, it's fleece lined, and it's built like the shoe version of a waterproof jacket, and a good waterproof jacket, like one of those expensive breathable ones. That's all very nice. Look, this is waterproof because of something called Dymatex. It's not water resistant, and they're fantastic. You could get this completely soaking wet, completely, like all the way up to here, and your socks will remain dry. These are just the best shoes. Perfect for this time of year. Also, summer's very far away. Probably not supposed to talk about the summer stuff right now. But you'll have these. You'll wear them through the winter, and then you'll be like, oh, wow, they're really breathable and comfortable in the summer as well. It's just super great. They're also super lightweight. And the best thing is, right now, Vessi is running their biggest sale of the year, 25% off site-wide, with up to 55% off select styles. That's Black Friday and Cyber Monday only. So don't miss out on the rare chance to save big on the most comfortable, most waterproof shoes you'll ever own. Go to Vessi.com, grab a pair before the sale disappears. That's Vessi.com. It's a great gift, or just a self-gift. Do it for yourself. And back to today's episode. It was dark and stormy night. Cassandra Cassie Jo Stoddart was born on December 21st, 1989 in Pocatello, Idaho, to parents Anna Maria Stoddart and Ronald J. Stoddart, the middle child between her brothers Christy and Andrew. She was mostly raised by her grandparents after her folks got divorced, and from an early age, spending much of her time drawing pictures like most children do. As she got older, she developed an interest in reading and soccer, as well as a love for music. I don't know, I know no one cares about your children like you do, but it's so nice, my daughter now just loves playing piano. You have a piano in the house, and she's just constantly playing that shit, just learning on little apps and just making stuff up, and I'm like, oh, it's really nice. No one cares about your children, Simon, move on. She was smart as a button too, since she was a straight-A student at Pocatello High School by the time she reached her junior year. By all accounts, Cassie was sharp, kind, comforting, loved by her family, her friends, and her boyfriend, and she had her whole future ahead of her, with plans on attending college as soon as she graduated high school. She was everything a parent could ask for, and all a sibling could want, with her brother Andrew saying how much he admired and loved her. Quote, "Me and her were always into the same stuff and going to the same places. We did everything together, even though we would argue and stuff just like any other sibling. I felt like I was always a step behind her, looking up to her. She really was a role model. She was really smart." It's because of all that, which makes what ended up befalling her all the more heartbreaking. We should have so much more to say about Cassie, so many more facts and tidbits to add to her life story, but we don't, because her promising future never came to pass. Her fulfilling and love-filled life was cut short on what should have just been an uneventful night. Friday the 22nd of September 2006 was just a night like any other, and Cassie was doing a favour to her aunt and uncle, Alison and Frank Contreras. They were away for the weekend, and so they'd asked Cassie to house sit and take care of their pets, 2 dogs and 4 cats to be specific, whilst they were gone. Yeah, okay, so she's an older teenager. It's like a good teenage little job to do. Cassie, being the loving and helpful niece that she was, accepted without a second thought, and so after a successful day at school, she headed over that afternoon to begin her obligation, being dropped off by her mum at the house on Whispering Cliffs Drive in northeast Bannock County. And if that's not the most haunted-sounding street I've ever heard in my life, I don't know what is. Yeah, Whispering Cliffs Drive, Jesus. Regardless, things were going smoothly and Cassie was enjoying the freedom of having a whole house to herself, so she invited her boyfriend, 16-year-old Matt Beckham, over to hang out for the night, and he arrived at around 6 p.m. to keep her company. They spent some time with each other and with the pets, and all was well. They even had a couple of friends come over to chill and watch a movie, and that being fellow 16-year-olds and classmates, Tori Anchik and Brian Draper. Tori and Brian both arrived a little after 8:20 p.m, and Cassie and Matt hung out with them for a while. Cassie even gave the 3 boys a full tour of the house, from the second floor all the way to the basement. Afterwards, all 14 sat together on the couch, had snacks and soda, and put on Kill Bill Volume 2. Tori and Brian didn't stick around, though, since they wanted to go see a new movie on the big screen instead, so they said their goodbyes and headed out into the night at around 9:30 p.m. It's a bit polite. It's like, nah, come round. 50 minutes later, they're like, you're watching this, are you? I'm going to go see a good new movie. And that's when things started to get strange. With their friends gone, Matt and Cassie simply returned to enjoying having the house to themselves. However, at around 10 p.m, the power to the house suddenly shut off without warning. All the lights, the TV, everything within the house just cut out entirely. It didn't last long, only a few seconds, and then everything came back online like normal. But it was enough to seem a little bit freaky. The couple were scared, spooked out of their minds since the house wasn't known to do this, and it wasn't storming out either. No, but you can have a power cut, it can be anything. Although it came back on by itself, which is odd. I don't know, you could be cooking or whatever, and it just overloads the circuit, the power goes down, and you just flip the breaker back on. But it doesn't seem to be what's happening here, does it? I think there's someone outside cutting off the power on purpose, but that's because this is an episode of true crime. I don't think if I was in this situation, I'd just be like, that's weird, and then I'd carry on with my life. As Cassie and Matt were trying to calm down, they started hearing noises. Perhaps it was because they were already freaked out, but they could swear they were hearing noises throughout the house, creaking and banging. They chalked it up to the house settling, as houses tend to do, and that's when the dogs started acting up. Specifically, they wandered over to the basement door, stared at it, and started growling defensively. Okay, there's someone in the basement. For reference, the basement is also where the circuit breaker to the house was installed. There is someone in the basement, where someone could, if they wanted to, kill the electricity for the whole house. Nervous and scared, they chose not to investigate, and frankly, I don't blame them. They were only kids, teenagers, and that house seemed like something straight out of a horror flick. I'd be like, okay, I don't want to go down there because there's someone down there, but let's just move. Let's just lock the basement door, or move a big chest in front of it, okay? Or just leave. I'll give all the props to Matt here. As the night grew late, and it became time for him to leave, he phoned his mum and asked if it was okay for him to spend the night there with Cassie. He didn't want to leave her there alone, not after all that had just happened. Unfortunately, his mother wasn't having any of it. Although, again, if they're going to get up to stuff, they're going to get up to stuff. It's not like, oh yeah, it's nighttime now. So. Again, a couple of teenagers alone in a house, let alone in a single bed all night by themselves. Well, she wasn't in the mood for grandchildren so early, so she said no. Again, if they're going to get up to stuff, they're going to get up to stuff. You need to educate them, right? I don't know. I haven't had to deal with this yet. Obviously, my kids are very young, but right? I don't know. I'll figure this out. By figure it out, I mean I'll ask ChatGPT. amazing for parenting advice. You're a little bit confused. You're like, oh, ChatGPT, what's this? And it's like, oh, it's completely normal. I'm like, okay, cool. Thanks, ChatGPT. What shall I do? And then I do this. And I'm like, worked out surprisingly brilliantly. Thank you, ChatGPT. However, when she arrived to drive Matt home, she told Cassie that she could spend the night at their house if she felt uncomfortable staying alone all night. Matt begged her to come with him back to his house to stay safe and be where he could make sure she was all right, but sadly, she refused. Yeah, I mean, because she's volunteered to take care of her aunt and uncle's pets. She was in charge of her aunt and uncle's house, and she was responsible for looking after this and the animals. And so, Cassie and Matt embraced and shared a loving kiss before they said their goodnights and goodbyes. After he climbed into his mother's car, Matt watched as Cassie went back into the house while he headed home for the night. On the way home, he called Brian to tell him what had happened and that he was on his way home. The call was short, though, and he could barely hear Brian at all, who was whispering the whole time. Oh, because they're in the movies. Right, I was trying to work out why he's whispering. Matt tried calling Cassie sporadically through the night, even as the clock hit midnight and beyond. He just wanted to know that she was alright, but she never responded to any of his calls. After a while, he figured that she'd simply gone to sleep, and so he left it alone, hitting the hay and telling himself that he'd go back to the house to see her before the weekend was out. Sadly, he never got the chance, as that kiss goodbye would be the last he ever received. Matt would never see his beloved Cassie again. Alive, anyway. Right out of a slasher film. The next day, Saturday, the 23rd of September 2006, Matt tried to get a hold of Cassie and called her phone multiple times, yet each time it rang and rang before eventually going to voicemail. Perhaps she was busy. She was house-sitting with a bunch of animals after all. Matt would have driven over and checked on her, but he didn't have a car and his folks were at work. He even rang up Tori and asked if she could give him a ride, but Tori was out of gas. Anna, Cassie's mum, hadn't heard from Cassie all day either, to the point of being annoyed as anything with Cassie for not being in contact or answering her phone when Anna called. I'll go around and check on her then. And so the whole day went by without a word from Cassie, and no one was there to go and physically check on her. Wait, why doesn't Cassie's mum go check on her? At that point, Matt perhaps thought he was overreacting. Her aunt and uncle would be back the next day, and he was sure all would be well. And I think that's a completely reasonable assumption, because most of the time you'd be like, oh yeah, I mean, it could be something bad, but statistically I know it's not. Which is scary, because statistically, sometimes it is. Bad, I mean. Hell, even after his mum came home and said that she could run him over there real fast, Matt said it was okay, that he was sure she was fine, and besides, he already had plans to attend a sleepover at his friend Tori's house. Wait, it's okay for him to go to Tori's house? But, okay. But no one had heard from Cassie the next day. Not Matt, not her mum, no one. Cassie had gone totally radio silent. When her Aunt Alison and Uncle Frank arrived home the next day with their 13-year-old daughter, they were probably expecting to meet Cassie there and see their house looking spick and span as promised. But when they walked in the door to their home on the afternoon of September the 24th, 2006, they walked into a scene from a horror movie. Not long after, a frantic Alison Contreras made a call to 911. Operator. Emergency 911. Alison. I need an ambulance. Out of my house now. Operator. Okay, what's going on? Alison. There's a girl dead on my floor. She's missing a finger. She's on the floor bleeding, not moving. Operator. Okay, I need you to get down and tell me if she's still breathing. Alison. She's not breathing. No, she isn't. She's cold. She's dead. She's dead. Cassie Jo Stoddart had been found lifeless on the living room floor in a pool of her own blood. She'd been stabbed to death, a total of 30 knife wounds all over her body, 12 of which were fatal stabs, and her finger had been severed entirely. What made it even worse was that her 13-year-old cousin had been the one who had found her. Christ. That's never going to leave you. All that time, while people were trying to reach her, her mum, her boyfriend, her other friends, her phone was ringing in a dark, quiet house, her body growing colder and colder by the minute. From the get-go, there were two people who were considered persons of interest in this horrible crime. First was her mother's boyfriend, as his fingerprints were found on the circuit breaker within the home. What? Okay, so her mother's boyfriend would be the brother-in-law of the aunt and uncle, right? So that's fine. He could have been down there. Maybe he's the technical guy. However, that was quickly explained by the fact that he'd recently done electrical work at the house, which was quickly confirmed by the family. There we go. The second was Matt himself. Yeah, boyfriend, naturally. Once it was determined that Cassie had died inside the house late that Friday night, he was brought in since he was the last person to see her alive. However, while he was initially considered to be the prime suspect, police dismissed him shortly after. Not only had his mother also been present the last time Matt had seen Cassie, but his father confirmed that he never left the house that night as the two of them stayed up late to watch a movie. Just a PSA, if you're that person, Still get a lawyer. Like, you might be thinking, oh, it makes me look guilty, but I'm completely innocent. Get a lawyer. They know what they're doing. The police will expect it. Please, don't let yourself get boxed into something that you shouldn't be boxed into. Matt even volunteered to take a lie detector test, which he passed with flying colours. Lie detector tests are dubious at best, at worst, but some investigators still believe that how a suspect reacts during a polygraph is a good indication of whether or not they should take a closer look at them or not. Since their number one suspect clearly had an alibi, the police were looking at a pretty long investigation, but then Matt mentioned something that caught all their attention. At the tail end of his questioning, he mentioned that he and Cassie weren't the only ones in the house that night. It might have been brief, but for about an hour, 2 more boys were at the house, and only after they left did things start getting strange. Oh my. Oh no. This, of course, was Tori Adamczyk and Brian Draper. With these 2 new variables now on the board, the police got to work. Before they even brought the boys in, the cops decided to check their initial alibi and headed to the movie theater. They had told Matt and Cassie that they were headed out to catch a movie, so of course they would have been there and seen by the employees, right? Oh no, he wasn't whispering because he was in the movie. He was whispering because he was in the basement, wasn't he? Sick. Well, no, as it turns out, one of the employees who'd been working at the local theatre that Friday night was actually a friend and classmate of Brian and Tori. Oh, Tori's a boy. I was like, why does he get to stay at Tori's house overnight? But Tori is a boy. And upon being questioned, she said that no, neither of the boys had come through the theatre at all that night. That same day, that was a terrible alibi, guys. That's not very clever of you. That same day, both Tori and Brian were brought in for questioning, and they were interviewed several times over the course of a few days. Because they were only 16 at the time, they were both questioned while their parents were present in the room. At first, everything was lining up. Lawyer. It's like, I don't want my parents present in the room. I mean, I do, but I also want my lawyer present in the room. At first, everything was lining up. Both their stories mirrored each other, and they both told the police that they went to Cassie's aunt's house together, that they hung out with Cassie and Matt for a while, and that they'd put a movie on, and then decided they wanted to go to the theatre instead to see a movie before departing. So far, so good, but that's when things began to unravel. The boys both said they'd gone to see the movie Pulse, but not only did the cops already know this was false, but neither of them could even describe a single thing that happened in the film they supposedly saw together. Guys, come on now. This is weak. You could have just been like, oh, well, no, we just didn't want to hang out with those 2 others, so we said we're going to go and see a movie, but actually we just went and did literally anything else by ourselves. So clearly they didn't actually go to the theatre, so what did they do? Upon being pressed harder for the truth, oh god, where are your lawyers? The boys changed their story, saying that the 2 of them had gone through cars trying to find a car that they could hijack for themselves. Certainly something to try and hide from the cops, sure, but the police could already smell blood in the water, of course they can. It's the classic, telling them you did something naughty so they don't think you did the naughtier thing. It isn't something that, the police know what you're doing. Get a lawyer. Something more that they were hiding. Then, after interviewing both boys for some time, the police brought out the polygraph. It was only then that Brian Draper reportedly came to the realization of just how serious this might be and that there was no getting out of this. And so he broke down before the cops and his parents and started to come clean. And his story blew the whole case wide open. Where's your lawyer? If you're the parents of this kid, be like, shut the f*** up, lawyer. Becoming Billy and Stu. Brian Lee Draper was born on March the 21st, 1990 in Sandy, Utah, before his family moved to Pocatello in 2002 when he was 12. Tori Michael Adamczyk was born on the 14th of June 1990 and had lived in Pocatello his whole life. From what we know, both boys were raised by loving families without any history of abuse or violence and with no disturbing factors to be seen, which makes what they did all the more shocking. It wouldn't be until their sophomore year in high school that Tori and Brian would meet up for the first time, and it wasn't long before the 2 would become the best of friends. Now, as with most friends, the 2 bonded over shared interests. Their main interest? Movies, particularly horror films. They loved all things horror, the scarier the better, but their all-time favorite scary movie was the 1996 Wes Craven classic Scream. There's clearly nothing wrong with that on the surface. As a horror lover myself, they can be some of the most interesting, creative, and downright fun films to come out all year. Yeah, I enjoy horror movies. But when it comes to Brian, I say I enjoy horror movies. Horror movies are exciting. But when it comes to Brian and Tori, that's when things start getting darker. You see, not only did they enjoy fictional horror, but they took a liking to real-life horror as well. Namely, they started idolizing figures like Ted Bundy, the Hillside Strangler, and the Zodiac Killer. Their real heroes, though, they were Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. Oh no, the Columbine guys, what the Like, you're a teenager, you're like, oh yeah, I'm a little bit edgy, like Ted Bundy, you know? What a cool dude. It's like, alright, edgelord, chill the out, we've seen it before. But Columbine, come on. Brian and Tori admired how Harris and Klebold were able to become famous, seemingly do what they wanted, and leave a lasting mark on the world. Famous is not the right word. Infamous is the word. They tried talking like them and listened to the same music as them. They even tried to dress like them, copying the whole trenchcoat mafia look. On top of it, if you start, like, at this time, when was Columbine? It was a little bit earlier than this, wasn't it? 90s? 90 something? Don't be wearing a trench coat to school. On top of that, 2 years before the attack on Cassie, Brian and an unnamed student had gone so far as to plan out a school shooting of their own, but they were caught before they could act and were simply given a warning by their principal not to think about doing that ever again, even as a joke. I think, yeah, you could just be like, well, it's just an edgelord joke. But still, I don't know what you do in that situation. How this was simply left off with a warning and no further action or attention put on Brian is well beyond me. Tori Adamczyk himself would later say that, quote, I'm becoming more and more obsessed with Columbine. It seems now that's all I think about. I would give anything to go back in time, be a part of Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold's lives. They are my heroes. I will follow in their footsteps, and maybe I'll even meet them. They're both dead, I'm pretty sure. They killed themselves, right? Best thing they did all day. It was around this time that Brian and Tori became friends with Cassie and Matt. They shared classes together, they liked the same types of movies, and they all got along great. It's even said that Brian had a crush on Cassie and wanted to date her, but her feelings weren't the same, and she was already dating Matt at the time. Brian seemed to accept this, and they continued to be friends regardless of his romantic yearnings. Considering Brian reportedly had posters and pictures of known psychopaths and serial killers on the wall of his bedroom at home, probably a good shout by her, indeed. Regardless of all their friendships and relationships, Tori and Brian were joined at the hip. The best of friends, always hanging out together, always talking about their own morbid interests and fantasies. And soon, they were tired of them simply being fantasies. That's the problem. Like, you can be edgelord teenager all you want. 99.9% of the time, you're just an edgelord teenager. But the 0.1% of the time, you become someone we feature on this show because you're sick. They wanted to be famous like Eric and Dylan. They wanted to commit not just a murder, but a whole murder spree, and they would do it together, step by step. They'd become like the real-life Billy Loomis and Stu Macher, bringing their own version of Scream into the world. The only question to them remained, how and who? Now, at first, Brian wanted to go about it much like Columbine, a large mass murder with as many casualties as possible. Tori, on the other hand, wanted it to be more calculated, more methodical and theatrical, carefully planned. So, what did they end up doing? Well, pretty much break several of the most important rules. These idiots decided on the day of the crime it would be a fantastic idea to take a video camera and start recording their whole process of discussing the murder, leading up to the murder, all of it. Guys. Come on. They'd used this camera to make small pretend horror films together in the past, but now they figured it would be great to use it in the real thing. Geniuses. They started recording everything, acting like it's simply another day for them, even getting Cassie on tape and acting all innocent with her, telling her to smile and say hi to the camera. And then, while at school in the library, they actually videotaped themselves discussing their ideas of who they wanted to kill. Out in the open, when anyone could hear, with no sense of self-preservation at all. I mean, they did talk quietly since it's a library, so that makes it okay, right? Yet no one took any notice, and they laid out their whole scheme, with Adamczyk repeatedly saying that if he had his way, they'd end up killing over 20 people once they were done. At least Draper had some sense, aiming for only about 8 or so. Obvious sarcasm is obvious. One thing they sadly did agree on was who their first victim would be. It would be Cassie. For them, it simply had to be her, and they discussed it so nonchalantly. It was like they were talking about where they would be hanging out that weekend or what music they liked to listen to. And then they had the stones to say some half-hearted apology to Cassie's family about what they planned to do to her. Straight from Brian Draper's mouth here, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Cassie's family, but she had to be the one. We have to stick to the plan, and she's perfect, so she's going to die. I don't know what to say. These demonic little put together an entire kill list, one filled with people they knew, people in their school, with Cassie being right at the top, and Matt too if he stuck around long enough. They wanted nothing more than to be serial killers, spree killers. And Tori said, with a smile on his face, that the perfect way to end all of this would be to go and do an actual school shooting, simply to increase their body count, all to end with them killing each other at the same time, going out like some sort of righteous martyrs, all while smiling, all while laughing, as if it were the most normal, casual thing in the world. As the day came to a close, they quickly put their plan into action. They had all their supplies, they had their transportation, and most importantly to them, they had their camera. Yup, these two dim bulbs continued to film themselves the whole drive to the house Cassie was looking after. And the whole way there, they continued to implicate themselves, continued to confess to the crime that they planned on committing, basically telling on themselves in advance. They didn't care though, they simply wanted to be famous, and they were clamoring to know what it was like to end someone's life. They constantly referred to themselves as bad and evil, and said that killing people shouldn't be illegal, as it just made people want to do it more. Yes. Yes. It's like, murder is illegal, which makes it, it's just because I can't do it. I really want to do it now. You weird brain piece of shit. Draper, we're sick psychopaths that get pleasure out of killing other people. Adam Chick, that sounds good, baby. Draper, we're going to go down in history and we're going to be just like Scream, except real life terms. Adam Chick, that sounds good, baby. Draper, we're going to be murderers. Like, let's see, Ted Bundy, like the Hillside Strangler, the Zodiac Killer. Adam Chick, no. Those people are more amateurish compared to what we're going to be. Sorry to break it to you, Adam Chick, but you're a terrible criminal who... you break all the rules. Like, what the f***? You're a rubbish criminal, and that's it. The amount of edgelord cringe oozing from these two jackasses would be embarrassing if they didn't actually go through with their sick fantasies. It's also embarrassing. That's not mutually exclusive. This is mega cringe and embarrassing, and they're also psychopathic murderer pieces of shit. They're terrible criminals on top of that. As they closed in on the house, they couldn't even hide their giddiness. Quote, we found our victim, and sad as it may be, she's our friend. But you know what? We all have to make sacrifices. Our first victim is Cassie Stoddard. She's going to be alone in a big dark house out in the middle of nowhere. How perfect can you get? We already know what happened to her. Brian and Tori arrived at the house and spent about an hour with Cassie and Matt hanging out. They kept it natural the whole time, not letting their masks of innocence slip, not even once. But one thing Brian did manage to do while Cassie gave them a tour of the house was to discreetly unlock the basement door that led to the outside, all while Matt and Cassie weren't looking. Oh, okay, so there's a base... Okay, sorry, I was wondering about the door being locked and then why they didn't lock the interior thing, but it seems there was also a door to the basement to the outside. Okay. Eventually, they excused themselves to attend their make-believe movie and drove off. Of course, this was all to keep up appearances, as they would quickly make their way back into the neighborhood and park down the street out of sight. Tori and Brian exited the car, and they got themselves ready. After shrouding themselves in dark hooded cloaks, they put on black gloves, armed themselves with hunting knives, and lastly hid their faces behind white masks painted with red bloody streaks. Like Ghostface, if they had ordered him off Temu or something. Sneaking around the back and re-entering the basement, they started to have their fun. They briefly cut the power to the house. They started slamming doors and throwing things about, trying to get Cassie and Matt to come downstairs and right into their clutches. This failed, though, as Cassie and Matt were too freaked out to even investigate, and so they waited, wanting to ascend the stairs at the proper moment. Had Matt stayed any longer, had he not been made to go home by his mother, they fully intended to end his life as well. But he went home, leaving Cassie to watch over the house for the night. And so the time came. Cutting the power again, the two cloaked intruders made their way up the stairs, knives in hand. After throwing the door open, they made a beeline for the living room, startling Cassie, where she lay on the couch. According to the two of them, Cassie actually clocked them immediately. Perhaps it was because she knew all the things they liked, that Scream was their favorite film, or just the way they carried themselves. They were her friends after all. She told them to cut it out, that they were scaring her, but that's exactly what they wanted her to be, nice and scared. And so they didn't hesitate. They started stabbing, they started cutting, her screams like music to their ears. Soon enough the music stopped, and all they were left with was the lifeless, bleeding body that was once their friend, full of adrenaline and covered in blood. Brian and Tori rushed out of the house, back through the basement, and back to the car. Jesus Christ. Quotes from them. Draper. Just killed Cassie. We left her house. This is not a joke. Adam Chick. I'm shaking. Draper. I stabbed her in the throat, and I saw her lifeless body just disappear. Adam Chick. Oh my god. Draper. Dude, I just killed Cassie. Oh. That felt like it wasn't even real. I mean, it went by so fast. We all go a little mad sometimes. And just like that, it was out in the open. Brian Draper sobbed as he told the police, along with his family, what had happened, how he had killed Cassie and left her there alone in the dark house surrounded by the animals she was meant to look after. Now, of course, being a gutless coward and an immature teenager, he had to downplay his part big time. He said he thought it was all supposed to be a joke, a simple prank to scare her, that they weren't really going to kill Cassie, but that Tori went too far, that it was all his doing. Tori was the real psycho, a manipulative monster with power over him, and when forced to hurt Cassie, he only stabbed her leg a little to make sure she was dead. It's not a bad defense strategy. It's about all you got, really, but you're going to prison. Like, under the gang laws, right? If you murder someone while someone else is murdering, if you're there, I don't know how it is in America, but I think how the law works in the UK, if it hasn't changed, is if, let's say these two guys are going to Cassie's and Adam Chick, or whoever it is, Brian thinks that, is it Brian Draper? One of them thinks the other is going to hurt her. And then he murders her, and the other guy's with her. They're both guilty of murder under, like, gang laws. As the weight of his actions came crashing down on him, Brian cried while alone in the interrogation room, begging Cassie for forgiveness. I'm so sorry, Cassie. I wanted to be your boyfriend, Cassie. I really did. Now I'll never see you again. Now armed with Brian's words, the authorities went to Tori. When confronted, he simply continued to deny everything and claimed he wanted no part of any of this. He tried his best to stick to his story and did so every time they came back with more information from Brian. But then Brian dropped the nuke on both of them. He said he could take them to where they hid their weapons and costumes. The night of the murder, it appears that the two wannabe serial killers got cold feet. Heading down into Black Rock Canyon, a large local desert ravine, they dumped their weapons, their cloaks, and their masks on the ground, tried burning them, but only managed to get the job half done before they simply buried it all and drove away. So much for two big Brad spree killers, now that reality had hit them full speed. Bitch cowards. The cops drove Brian out to the canyon, and he led them right to their hidden evidence stash. Half-burnt masks, half-burnt cloaks, half-burnt knives. Everything about this was the definition of half-arsed. Just a couple of moronic teenagers who thought they could make everything go away without any actual effort, especially the fact that the videotapes were not totally destroyed and disposed of, as they were also found in their little hidey hole. Even though the tapes were charred and partially burned, the cops were actually able to save the footage, which threw both boys under the bus in the most grievous way, all in their own words. They got to see the two of them. They're terrible criminals, like, in terms of competence, and also terrible people in terms of, well, people. They got to see the two of them plan their attack on Cassie, the list they made of all those they wished to kill, and all the skin-crawling, cringy grandstanding they did on the drive over there, bragging about being evil and how many people they planned to slaughter. And let me reiterate here, nothing whatsoever that I read or watched in regards to these two indicated that they were bound for this from the get-go. No abusive home life, no mental abnormalities on record, no injuries or accidents that sent them off the deep end. Nothing at all. These were just two pathetic kids, regular to most, who chose, and let me repeat that, chose to do these awful things. They idolized some of the most monstrous individuals in history, put them on pedestals as heroes, and wanted that same level of attention and infamy. Callous, heinous, heartless, evil, in the purest sense, all in the form of two disturbed and immature children who were sick in the head, not by accident or diagnosis, but by choice. To quote Brian Draper himself, "Murder is power. Murder is freedom." Sure, Brian, and I'm Matthew Lillard. I don't know who Matthew Lillard is. Matt, who wrote this. And just like that, the police had all they could want. Tori Adamczyk and Brian Draper were both formally arrested on September 27, 2006 and charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. Only a few days after her death, the murder of Cassie Jo Stoddart was solved. And wouldn't you know it, as soon as the world crashed down on top of him, Tori started talking up a storm, and surprise, surprise, just like Brian did, Tori turned on him immediately, trying to make it seem like Brian was the mastermind. The whole trial was the defense team of both boys simply pointing the finger at each other, with neither one taking any sort of responsibility. But any sort of defense that they even tried to put up was quickly dismantled by the prosecution, from their obsession with the Columbine killers and Scream to the minutes upon minutes of video footage that they'd personally made. Yeah, guys. Why even try to have a defense? You gotta plead guilty, guys. What's the point? You're just wasting taxpayer money. Again, folks, don't write down your crimes, and by extension, don't film the planning of your crimes. In the end, no matter the excuse, no matter the defense, no matter the reasoning, the jury had seen and heard enough. Brian Draper and Tori Adamczyk were both convicted of the first-degree murder of Cassie Jo Stoddart on April 17, 2007 and June 8, 2007, respectively. Thus, on August 31, 2007, both Draper and Adamczyk were sentenced to a mandatory sentence of life without the possibility of parole, plus 30 years to life, being convicted of conspiracy to commit murder. Wow! Just life without parole. Your life is over before it even began, boys. You losers. Sadly, no yeehaw state here, as they were both juveniles at the time. But I will say that there are select occasions where I feel this would be more than one of those times. In the words of Anna Stoddart, I'm just happy my baby got her justice. Both are still alive, now 34 years old, and both are being housed at the Idaho State Correctional Institution, where they'll likely remain until the end of their days. It must be pretty awkward seeing your former buddy across the yard, knowing how much you screwed your own lives up, seeking such ill-fated and deplorable validation, and of course fame. They claim to feel sorry about their actions, but that won't erase what they did, and nor should it. Brian Draper has been very outspoken about his feelings of guilt, and he was even interviewed over the phone for an episode of Dateline by the host Keith Morrison. To whom he explained his motivation for the attack. It's fear. You're afraid of being a nobody. You're afraid of being a loser. But the other half that no one talks about is when you go to prison, you lose your entire life. You lose everything. I would give my life if I could change it. Well, you can't, you loser, and that's why you're going to be in prison until you die. But no amount of regret or sorrow will ever bring Cassie back, and her family has to live with that for many years. Anna Stoddart passed away from cancer in 2022, with her boyfriend saying none of them had any plans of giving forgiveness to the monsters that took Cassie away from them. And I think her brother Andrew put it perfectly when interviewed in 2016 by the Associated Press, speaking of how her not being around has affected him greatly, but how together they continue to remain steadfast in her memory. Quoting him, I know how to handle it now. It's still a huge part of me. For me, every month of September is what I struggle to get through. It comes in waves, honestly. There's days when I'm fine, and others I'll just crumble. It's always going to be a part of us. It's not like it's ever going to go away. It's always on the back of our minds. But we focus on keeping our family strong instead of focusing on the bad. We focus on the good. And when she was around still, nobody should ever have to go through this. Wrap up. And there we are, the ending to our story. To say that this is both sad and infuriating is an understatement. Cassie Jo Stoddart was a wonderful girl, the definition of an innocent, someone everyone around her adored and knew that they could count on. She never did anything wrong, and yet she ended up dead, all because two morons that she called friends wanted to be famous, wanted to feel the rush of killing someone, and believed that she was the perfect first victim. She had a bright future, and yet she never got to live long enough to experience it. Brian Draper and Tori Adamczyk are scumbags, pure and simple. A couple of thrill-seeking idiots, dependent on each other's friendship and attention. And their sick need to gain fame all ended in the death of an innocent teenage girl, someone they dared to call their friend even till the end. Obsessed with going on a kill spree, obsessed with the movie Scream, obsessed with becoming a real-life Billy Loomis and Stu Macker, they filmed themselves planning the whole thing, wanting to be as accurate as possible to their favourite film. They did it again as they prepared to do the deed, driving over and sounding like a couple of giddy little schoolgirls about the very thought of slaughtering Cassie. They even had the stones to visit their victim under the guise of spending time with her before doubling back and butchering her. Sad and pathetic doesn't even come close to describing these bloodthirsty degenerates. I suppose he really is like Skeet Ulrich and Billy Loomis said in the climax of Scream. Don't blame the movies. Movies don't create psychos. Movies make psychos more creative. They're monsters, and they deserve to spend the rest of their lives behind bars, haunted by the consequences of their selfish, murderous actions, and thankfully, it appears that's where they'll stay, as any and every attempt at an appeal for either of them has been shut down almost instantly. Yes, because they were terrible criminals who did a terrible thing, and they belong in prison. Not that it has stopped them from trying, or from getting their families' support in getting released. Hell, in August 2012, 5 years after the boys were sentenced and put away, Tori's mum, Shannon Adamczyk, self-published a book about her son, having the nerve to title it The Guilty Innocent. Alright, as you can imagine, it goes on and on about how she believes her boy is really innocent, how he should be home with his family, and how much she loves and supports him. Now, I understand a mother's love for her son, as well as her right to freedom to write and publish whatever she wants, but in regards to that title, all I can say is this. Bitch, where? So, now, as the darkness leaves us yet again, I'd like to take a moment once again to remember Cassie. She's the one who should be celebrated. She's the one who should be remembered, not the losers who stole her life away. She was smart, she was kind, she was beautiful. She had a whole life ahead of her, a bright future to look forward to, and a loving family to support her all the way. She didn't deserve her fate, not even close. And so we keep her memory alive now, all while her killers rot away, hopefully to be forgotten eventually, themselves. And so let us leave today with the engraving on the back of her tombstone, personally picked out for Cassie by the devoted family who loved her more than anything in the world. We will love you forever. The Broken Chain. We little knew that day God was going to call your name. In life, we loved you dearly. In death, we do the same. It broke our hearts to lose you. You did not go alone, for part of us went with you the day God called you home. You left us beautiful memories. Your love is still our guide. And though we cannot see you, you're always at our side. Our family chain is broken. Nothing seems the same. But as God calls us one by one, the chain will link again. Mum and Dad, Christy, Andrew, Aurora, Grandma and Grandpa. Rest in peace, Cassie. That's the end of the episode. Thanks for being here.